Now that both Shout Druid and Stormslide have been nerfed into the ground by Blizzard, it looks like pure Landslide is going to be the best Druid build for Season 6, the first season of the expansion. Now that's always tricky to talk about before a season starts. There could be some crazy bugs and interactions that I don't know about at the moment. I didn't get to play the pre-release version of the game. So, there could be something incredibly OP that ends up being the best, that something's just broken. But on paper, pure Landslide looks to be very, very good. This footage is from the PTR. Now, on the PTR, the pit only went up to level 100. They've changed that. It goes up to level 150 now. Pit level 100 from the PTR is going to be roughly pit level 80 on the live game. This footage is from more of a overpower version of Landslide. Actually, I thought I had footage of a Bestial Rampage clear, but I couldn't find it. I do think that the Bestial Rampage Wildheart Hunger version is going to be the best. Those boots now are just incredibly good. And keep in mind that the planner might be a little bit wonky. Some things are not calculating properly, but the majority of it should be pretty accurate. We'll be getting res cap, armor cap, either movement cap or very close to it, and we'll be very close to critical strike chance cap as well. And with this Wildheart Hunger version, we'll be getting tons of attack speed as well. So of course, our main source of damage is going to be Landslide. You crush enemies between 4 pillars of earth, dealing damage. And then we'll be running the modifier that gives us the Terra Motes to guarantee crits that deal increased damage as well. Now, like I said, we are still stacking critical strike chance. And the main reason for this is because on single targets like bosses, you can't rely on the Terra Motes for your critical strike chance. So we will be self-casting this quite a bit. And we're also going to be getting extra Landslide projectiles from the temper on the weapon, along with the Earthbreaker ring. We'll be at either 100% chance for Landslide projectiles to cast twice, or very close to it. And then, of course, the Earthbreaker unique ability. When you cast Landslide, you leave behind tectonic spikes, and then when you spawn a Landslide pillar within those spikes, you have a chance to spawn 2 instead. So it gets pretty crazy pretty fast how many pillars you're actually able to spawn off of just a single cast of Landslide. And because of this, we have really insane lucky hit. So any of the various unlucky hit effects that we have in the build happen very frequently because of all of these hits. And then we're going to be running Poison Creeper, and we're going to get benefits from, passives like Envenom because enemies are poisoned. And we'll run the Subterranean aspect with Poison Creeper so that when you cast Poison Creeper, it also casts Landslide in a circle around you. And then your Earth skills deal increased damage to poisoned enemies. Then that's paired with the Pack Leader Spirit Boon on Lucky Hit, which will be happening very, very frequently because of all of the Landslide pillars. You have a 25% chance to reset the cooldown of your companion skills. Poison Creeper is a companion skill. Kind of the gameplay loop is going back and forth between self-casting Landslide and casting your Poison Creeper landslides. Our ultimate ability is going to be Petrify. This is going to give us resource back when we cast it. It's going to stun enemies and then also give us a pretty big critical strike damage multiplier. This is paired with the Calm Before the Storm Spirit Boon. So on Lucky Hit, your Nature Magic skills, which Landslide is a Nature Magic skill, have a 10% chance to reduce the cooldown of your ultimate skill by 2 seconds. So when you're in a large pack of enemies, spamming Landslide, spamming Poison Creeper, this resets the cooldown of your Petrify insanely fast. I'm planning on running 3 defensives, so the first one will be Earthen Bulwark. The main reason for this is for the Unstoppable. We're going to be running Blood Howl. Now, we need to run 1 werewolf skill in the build. It doesn't necessarily have to be Blood Howl. It could be Claw, or it could be Shred. But I like Blood Howl here, mainly for the passives on the skill tree that reference casting a defensive skill. Because with the first modifier on this, kills reduce the cooldown of Blood Howl by 1 second. So if you're speed farming especially, you can Blood Howl very often. And you'll notice that I'm actually not running the modifier that gives the attack speed. So we're actually getting to category 2 attack speed cap without it. So it's not even necessary. You could potentially run the modifier that gives you spirit back if you really wanted to. I don't think it'll be needed, but it is a possibility if you wanted to run it. And we're also running Debilitating Roar. So of course this gives us a really hefty damage reduction for 4 seconds after cast. It also fortifies you. And then the change for this season is that Debilitating Roar has a modifier that gives us 15% increased damage while it's active. All right, so let's go over all the gear here. First off, we have Vasili's Prayer. This is going to turn our Landslide into a Werebear skill, and then also give us Fortify whenever we cast a Werebear skill. This will allow us to take advantage of the various Werebear passives and Paragon nodes and things like that. This gives us life, a ton of willpower percentage. Defensive posture is going to give us damage reduction while we are fortified, and then also armor. The first rune setup there is going to be casting a non-channeled core skill, which will be when we self-cast Landslide, and then we're going to invoke the Barbarian's Warcry for increased damage. Planning on running the new Shroud of False Death. This is the brand new mythic for this season. It has decent stats on it, but the main reason you're running this is for the +1 to all passives. It's extremely powerful. You got to think about that. All of the different passive damage multipliers that we're running, we're getting an extra rank to those. We're getting an extra rank to all of the defensive passives as well. So really, it's insane value getting +1 to all passives. This also has all stats, damage on next attack after entering stealth, life, resource gen, and then the unique ability, if you haven't dealt damage in the last 2 seconds, gain stealth and 40% movement speed. And this 40% movement speed while we're in stealth will get us to movement speed cap. So for the second rune setup, you actually have some options here. You're going to want to run, more than likely, cast a skill with a cooldown, because again, we're going to be casting our defensives, but also casting Poison Creeper very often, and that is a cooldown skill. So I like Spiritborn's Vortex. It's a pull, so it'll pull enemies in closer. That should help with DPS. But I think you could definitely run the Earthen Bulwark here. And there's probably some other options too. I think those are the two that I've landed on though, either Vortex or Earthen Bulwark. So for the gloves, we've got ranks to Landslide. This is where we're going to get on Lucky Hit, chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. And then you can either go willpower or attack speed here. We have tempered Earth critical strike chance, and then tempered on Lucky Hit, chance to freeze enemies. And then again, the Poison Creeper subterranean aspect. For the pants, you're going to want to go a bit defensive on these. So we're getting armor, and then we're tempering total percentage armor. And we're going max life, willpower, petrified duration. And then here we're running Skinwalker just like we did last season. Skinwalker is crazy for healing. It also helps you with Fortify, although the build doesn't really need help with Fortify. You've got a lot of sources of generating Fortify. It's mainly for the healing there. All right, so then we have the Wildheart Hunger Boots. So shapeshifting into a new animal form increases the value of your bestial range bonuses by 5% up to 50%. This bonus decays by 2% per second. Even with this new version of these boots, they're still pretty annoying to use. With this build in particular, though, we're switching back and forth between forms pretty consistently. Keep in mind that does say a new animal form, so going to human form shouldn't do anything there. But we're going from bear to bear constantly. And so I think pretty naturally you should be able to keep this bonus high. And just to kind of go over what that passive does one more time. So when shapeshifting, Werebear grants 30% increased damage, and Werewolf grants 20% attack speed. Both bonuses persist as long as you are in either animal form and are lost after 3 seconds in human form. And again, even though we are going into human form, we are never staying in human form for 3 seconds. So that part of it should never be an issue. Basically, once you get the bonus from the passive, you should just have it for the entirety of the pit run, Nightmare Dungeon run, whatever you're doing. Part of it that you have to kind of manage a bit is the increasing that bonus with the Wildheart Hunger Boots. But the reason why these are so crazy now, so if you look at this, I mean, you're getting an additional 50% to the damage multiplier, but you're getting an additional 50% to the attack speed as well. Before, these boots just gave you a damage multiplier. I believe it was up to 60%. Getting this much attack speed, though, off of one pair of boots or just one item is pretty absurd, especially when you factor in that we're also getting 14.5% shape-shifting attack speed as a stat on the boots. So the key passive itself, the unique effect, the shape-shifting attack speed, and the earth attack speed from Earthbreaker will get us to the 100% Category 2 attack speed cap. So that's why there's no reason to run the attack speed modifier on Bloodhowl. I suppose the only reason would be if for some reason you feel like you can't keep the stacks on Wildheart Hunger very high. But then at that point, it's probably useless to run it. So we'll also be getting hefty movement speed out of this, ranks to heightened senses which give movement speed and damage reduction. And then we're getting cold res from the boots, which actually with how resistances work now, getting cold res on the boots is actually a very convenient stat to have there. Because effectively, we're getting a ton of all resist on the Paragon board. This takes care of the cold resist. We're getting poison resist from the heightened malice board. And then we can run a lightning gem, a shadow gem, and a fire gem. So for the weapon, we're going with a pole arm for the vulnerable damage. And again, enemies should be vulnerable pretty much all the time with that percentage lucky hit chance to apply vulnerable. So on the PTR, all I needed to take care of our spirit issues was this unlucky hit up to a 15% chance to restore primary resource. It looks like this is unchanged from the PTR. It's still giving you a ridiculous amount of primary resource. Over 100% for some reason on a two-handed weapon. As long as that's the same, this should be all that you need. So that's why we're able to not run a generator at all, and you don't need spirit per second even. The only other thing you have in the build that gives spirit would be petrify. So we're running willpower and maximum life here as well. Again, chance for landslide projectiles to cast twice, and then earth critical strike chance. And then here we're going to run the aspect of the aftershock. Earth pillars each strike a second time and deal an additional 31% bonus damage per hit. So then for the amulet, we've got ranks to envenom, which again, we'll be getting critical strike damage versus poisoned enemies with this. Percentage willpower. And then I also have ranks to quick shift. Quick shift could also be any of the other damage multiplier passives here. I currently have debilitating roar cooldown reduction. This could also be debilitating roar duration. You could put movement speed here. This could be life, petrified duration, another unlucky hit chance to apply a crowd control, things like that as well. Then we have earth critical strike chance. Then we're running actually the buffed aspect of retaliation. So your core skills deal up to 113% increased damage based on your amount of fortify. And again, we should be pretty much fortified at all times. Going to be running Ring of Starless Skies. Pretty self-explanatory, just an extremely OP ring. Tons of attack speed, critical strike chance, lucky hit chance, ranks to core skills. Landslide is a core skill. And then when you spend primary resource, it reduces the resource cost of your skills and increases your damage by up to 50%. Next up, let's take a look at the passives. Now, keep in mind that I don't have every single DR passive. I don't have every single damage passive. So if you feel like you don't have enough damage reduction, you need to drop some damage or vice versa, do that. Do what's best for your character. So we've got 1 point in Claw, 1 point into Enhanced Claw. We have to get these to move on. We've got max ranks into Landslide, 1 point in Enhanced Landslide, and 1 point in Primal. We've got 1 point in Heart of the Wild. That's to get to Wild Impulses. We have 3 points here. 1 point in Predatory Instinct, 3 points in Iron Fur for the damage reduction. We've got 1 point in Earthen Bulwark, and then 1 point into Enhanced Earthen Bulwark for the Unstoppable. 1 point in Blood Howl, 1 point in Enhanced Blood Howl. 1 point in Debilitating Roar, 1 in Enhanced, and then 1 into Innate. And keep in mind, I've only got 1 rank in Debilitating Roar currently. More ranks into this reduce the cooldown, so you can potentially drop some other passives points to put more ranks into Debilitating Roar. We've got 3 points in Ancestral Fortitude, 3 points into Vigilance, and this is one of the passives that we get a damage reduction for 6 seconds after using a defensive skill, which has great synergy with Blood Howl. Same with the new Backlash. We get increased damage for 5 seconds after casting a defensive. I've got just currently 1 point into Poison Creeper and no points into the modifiers. If you feel like for some reason you're not keeping your poison up enough, you can add points into here to increase the duration. We've got 3 points into Clarity, 3 points into Feral Aptitude. This is another new passive. We get increased damage while healthy and then increased damage while above 100% movement speed. Got 1 point into Mending to get to Provocation. We have 3 points into this, plus another point from the Shroud of False Death. So typically this would be, we get an overpower after being in Werebear form for 12 seconds. This is down to 8 seconds with that chess piece. 1 point into Neurotoxin to get down to Envenom. We got 3 points into this, plus another 1 from Shroud of False Death, and then potentially another 7 ranks to it from the Amulet. Got 1 point into Crushing Earth, and then 3 points into Stone Guard. Currently only have 1 point into Petrify. Now again, just like Debilitating Roar, you can put ranks into Petrify now, you can put ranks into all of your ultimates, and it reduces the cooldown. You can absolutely put more points into here to get this cooldown even lower. Keep in mind, Petrify has built-in cooldown reduction when you kill enemies or hit a boss, and then of course the Calm Before the Storm to reduce the cooldown. We've got Prime Petrify and then Supreme Petrify. We've got 3 points in Defiance for more damage versus elites, and then 3 points into Natural Disaster for more damage versus vulnerable enemies. Another new passive, Catastrophe. You deal increased damage for 8 seconds after casting an ultimate skill. This should be up pretty much all the time, just about. A little bit less against single targets, but pretty consistently we're going to be getting this damage bonus. We've got 3 points into Quick Shift, and this works just like the key passive. Basically, once you have the bonus, as long as you don't stay in human form for 3 seconds or longer, you keep it. And then we've got Heightened Senses for more damage reduction and movement speed. And then, of course, the key passive that we've already discussed. Next up, let's take a look at the Paragon board. Now, keep in mind, we have pretty big sweeping changes to Paragon. So you can only have a max of 5 boards now, and that includes your starting board. We also have way more Paragon points, potentially. Now, keep in mind that it's probably not realistic to think about Paragon with 328 points. To get there is going to take a ton of grinding. You probably want to look at your Paragon boards, especially early on, at more of like a 200 to 250 point range. I've got this board all maxed out for the time being, so we'll go over it here real quick. So my starting glyph, I want to be Eliminator. It's one of the new glyphs for Druid. It is not in the planner at the moment. I'm not really sure what's going on with that, so this is just kind of a placeholder, but we are getting pretty much almost all the willpower we can in that first board, assuming Eliminator is going to be there. So board 2 is going to be Ancestral Guidance. So Ancestral Guidance has actually been buffed from 30% to 40%. And then we're also putting the other new glyph here, Headhunter, which is going to give us increased damage versus elites, increased damage, and then it's also going to buff all normal nodes within range. Now, these have definitely been tuned way down from where they were going to be originally, but should still be very good. I think other glyphs are much more competitive with these now. Before, they were going to be potentially increasing normal nodes by like 500%. So 100% is definitely a big difference. So on this board, we're also getting some Spirit on Kill, life and all resist, more life over here, some core skill damage. So you see that I have Heightened Malice as the 5th board at the moment. Chances are, early on, you may want to go Heightened Malice pretty quick, maybe even as your 3rd board. And the reason for that is this is where we're getting a lot of our poison res. So a lot of the poison res is down here. And Heightened Malice is a great damage multiplier on its own in AoE settings. We're also getting some more life here. Get some damage reduction from poisoned enemies through here. And then some all resist over on this side here. This is going to be the Spirit glyph. And we're going to get all the decks that we can within this radius. So the next up, Earth and Devastation. So this board has definitely been buffed drastically. So we've got armor and max life here. Now we're actually getting just straight up damage reduction. 7.5% from the magic nodes, and then another 5% from the rare here. We're getting Earth and Devastation itself. And again, on the PTR, this was not working. So we just had a huge damage multiplier that wasn't in the build at all. You can actually get all of the damage versus crowd control that you need just from the Earth and Devastation board with the way it's set up currently. You can go either way with it. You can go with a glyph that buffs magic nodes or a glyph that buffs rare nodes. And so we've got 3 damage to crowd controlled enemies nodes here that are getting buffed by the Earth and Sky glyph. And there's also some more damage versus crowd controlled over here as well. So Earth and Sky is going to, again, buff our magic nodes, give us 10% increased damage to crowd-controlled or vulnerable enemies, and then another 10.4% increased nature magic skill damage. There's also some max life and all res up here as well. As you can see, there's max life just all over the place with this new board setup. It's pretty crazy. So then Survival Instincts, which may be my new favorite board overall. We're going to get some damage versus healthy enemies and max life here. We've got the damage reduction while fortified. Getting Survival Instincts itself, which is now 60%, used to be 50%, so this is while in Werebear form. We got more max life up here, then we're getting some more damage while healthy down here. So we're going to run Outmatch. It's going to increase rare nodes, give us increased physical damage to non-elites and bosses, and then increased damage. The reason we're running this here, though, is they've changed the rare node here to flat life. And so we can increase this with the Outmatch glyph. It's pretty nuts. And then you also have some flat life as magic nodes as well. So technically you could run Earth and Sky here, potentially, to just buff the magic nodes instead of the rare node too. But yeah, this is the first time that there's been flat life on the Paragon board for Druid. Then we've also got damage while in Werebear form down here, and some willpower. Now, there's a good chance that I'm going to be tweaking this Paragon board as the season goes on, and I look at it more. I'm trying to work on some of the other builds at the moment, especially the werewolf stuff, now that we actually are getting a decent Paragon board multiplier with Lust for Carnage. So look out for that. I'm sure this will change a little bit as time goes on, but these are the 5 boards that you want to run. And for the most part, I think the glyphs are the ones you want to run too. The only thing I would potentially think about dropping would be one of the new glyphs, either Eliminator or Headhunter. Okay, let's take a look at Mercenaries now. Again, I didn't play the pre-release version of the game, so I have not tested any of this. I'm just kind of looking at what I think will probably be good for our build. So I'm thinking going Varyana. So we get some attack speed here with Hysteria. Then we go Whirlwind. And then Whirlwind will pull enemies in. I think this will especially be good if we decide to drop the Vortex rune and go with Earthen Bulwark instead. And then for the reinforcement, I'm thinking Rahir with Bastion. I've heard good things about this from people that have actually played the expansion. The other option I would say would be to go Subo with Cover Fire and then Opening Fire, which will give us a critical strike damage multiplier for 4 seconds after he casts this. So we'll see. I mean, the mercenary choices are totally up in the air at the moment. We'll have to play the game and see what really works with the build and what feels best. So anyways, guys, I'm going to about wrap it up. I don't know if anybody's playing Druid in the expansion. I think everybody's switching to Spiritborn just about. But if you're one of the few left, this should be one of your better builds to choose from. And I'll tell you from my experience from last season, when everybody was playing Stormslide, I played pure Landslide just about the entirety of Season 5. So I've got a lot of experience with the build. It is very fun, it's very powerful, and it is actually surprisingly quick for speed farming. A lot of people don't seem to think that it is, but the reason why it is because you can cast Poison Creeper while moving now. You don't have to stop to cast it. So if you're running content where the landslides from Poison Creeper one-shot enemies, you can just move, and a lot of times the landslides from Poison Creeper will proc Pack Leader and just reset the cooldown of your Poison Creeper without having to cast anything else. So it's actually surprisingly good for speed farming. So anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.